This year we would be closing at a 120 CR, revenue.
What was it like working with a minimal capital and those late nights if you have to start from the home?
When we kind of got married, we were two jobless people trying to build a brand by ourselves. There was one night when I think we packed 100 orders, and that was like a milestone for us. The initial phase was amazing, but when we were building our brand, now from day one, we knew that we did not want to raise any kind of funding, and it was a conscious decision. At that point of time, starting with just an initial capital of say 2 lakhs, we had about 11 lakhs which was stuck. 2016 is when we launched our own website. After 10 years of e-commerce journey, we finally launched our first offline store.
So, when it comes to growth, what has worked the best for you guys in terms of customer acquisition? Hi, I am Muskan Kapoor from StartupTalky, and today I'm in conversation with Miss Maya Varma, co-founder of Joker&Witch and Teejh. In today's conversation, we'll be talking about her journey, the story behind building these brands, and what it really takes to build and scale a D2C business. So let's get started. Hi Maya, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Muskan. How are you?
Great, thank you. I would love to know from your perspective that if your younger self could see you today doing what you're doing, like building brands like this, how do you think she would feel?
My younger self never had any plans to kind of get into entrepreneurship, to be honest. I think I always saw myself working in a company, going up the corporate ladder. But yeah, entrepreneurship happened by chance, to be honest, for me at least. Um, but I think looking back, if my younger self was to see myself today, she'd be really proud.
That's wonderful. So I would really like to go back a little to your time. Like, where did you grow up? And I would love to know what kind of child you were while you were in school or in your early education life.
So I originally come from Kerala, though I've never lived in Kerala. My
Mm.
early years were mostly in Delhi.
Mm.
My dad was in the central government, so we kind of moved around a bit, but most of
Mm.
my life I've spent in Delhi. As a kid, I was always quite studious, um,
Okay.
but I was also equally, interested in arts and, drawing, painting, dance. So I think that creative inclination was always there.
Yeah. And after NIFT, you happened to work in corporate first, right?
No, so at NIFT, I studied accessory design, and
Yeah.
post that, I joined Rajesh Pratap Singh, one of the
Mm.
known
Design.
designers in
Yeah.
India. So I worked there with him as an accessory designer, and after that, I moved to High Design in Pondicherry. I was
Okay.
working as a product designer over there, and at High Design, I kind of got the opportunity to move from design to retail, and I
Okay.
was handling, the high design as well as Holy
Hmm.
uh, they used to have. So at that point of time, I was handling the Holy retail as well. Post high design, I moved to Bangalore. I joined a company called StyleTag, which was a online e-commerce platform, which the idea was to kind of bring all the designer brands online. And this was in 2013, so it was quite early for its
Really
day.
young.
Yeah, I've had like a quite varied experience in terms of working with a designer brand, a retail brand, and an online brand, which kind of gave me a lot of insights and a lot of learning in terms of, the different aspects of how fashion works.
Yeah. You got a little early stage advantage, I guess.
For sure, for sure. I think a lot of understanding of e-commerce, how e-commerce works, and because in the early days there was a lot of learning from what works, what doesn't work,
Mm.
and we've seen a lot of changes in the last, say, from 2013 to now, how e-commerce has also evolved. So yeah, I think it was a good thing that at that point of time we were early in the game.
Now we have spoken about the work, and before we get into your entrepreneurship journey, we have already heard the term we. because so somewhere along the way your co-founder comes in, which who also happens to be a life partner. So how did that happen? How what does that story look like? How did you guys meet and what was your story like?
I met my partner and my husband Satish when I was working in StyleTag. We were both working in the same company. We were kind of set up by one of our common friends, and it kind of, we kind of clicked immediately. We had
Hmm.
very similar backgrounds, very similar upbringing, values, dreams of what we wanted to do. And passion also, I think very similar passions also. And that's where we kind of so we dated for about a year and a half, and then we got married in 2015 January. And that was also a very you know like a very volatile kind of a phase, because we Satish had just quit his job from
Hmm.
StyleTag a couple of months back, and started he had just started Joker&Witch. And 2 months down the line, I also quit and joined him. So in Jan 2015, when we kind of got married, we were two jobless people trying to build a brand by ourselves. Um, very risky decision, but yeah, I think worked out well for us.
It seems like you guys have very stable jobs on your own, and you decided to quit and just you got immediately married probably because
Yes,
there's not much gap. How did
yes.
that uncertainty felt like? Because usually in Indian markets, whenever you are getting married or so, there is the stigma ki, okay, everybody has to be fully settled and stuff, and from parents, from other people, you get a lot of things. What was that phase like for you? Because you had just quit your job and you are starting completely something new.
So I think what worked from a stigma point of view or a family point of view was that the marriage date was already set, and then we quit.
Oh, amazing.
So that was one. And secondly, for us, it was also a little bit of a trouble initially because of what you're talking about. So Satish is
Hmm.
from UP. He's from the north, and I'm from the south. So we
Yeah.
had to deal with that also, before the
Hmm.
things kind of you're convincing our parents and all of.
Yeah.
So that we went through all of that ordeal as well. And then I think eventually it worked out well. The families were happy. And so yeah, so when we actually quit our jobs, I think when our parents were a little worried.
Hmm.
Um, but when we started the company, when we got married and when we were doing the business, to be very honest, the initial few months, the first few months were amazing. Like, it like things worked out so well initially. Like we thought that we're just gonna it's just gonna fly, right? The entire
Yeah.
business. So things were quite, in control, and we thought it was all going to be nice and good. But yeah, things kind of turned around 6 months down the line. We had a few um, lot of challenges that came in. So I think from a family perspective, they knew that we got into it, and now we
Yeah.
are going to do it.
Do it.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you guys happen to have that proper North Indian and South Indian wedding a mix? Was that like that?
Yeah, we got married in Kerala, and we had both a Kerala wedding as well as a traditional, North Indian wedding also.
And now speaking of like when you guys quit, obviously you guys must have a strong faith in your idea and belief. How did that idea even came into the picture that you guys want to go with Joker and which, let's say the name, let's say the products you guys decide. So how did you came about the just the ideation?
So I'll talk about the two things separately. One is
Hmm.
why the product.
Yeah.
The product, because like I said, when we were working in StyleTag, so I was handling the accessories category over there.
Yeah.
And one thing that we saw was that there was a big gap in the watches as a category,
Hmm.
because even then and even today, I would say that the entire watch category has always been, dominated by bigger players.
Hmm.
There's never been a newcomer who has,
Yeah.
been there in the space. When we were there, there was a point when we had an opportunity to kind of travel abroad and figure out vendors for our private label brands. So
Mm.
we were building the private label for the company at that point of time. And that's also when we got exposed to a lot of, how the international market works and what are the opportunities that are there and what kind of manufacturing capabilities are there. So that's where we realized that, watch as a category, there is a huge space here in India, and
Yeah.
there's nobody doing it. And Satish has always been a watch person. He's been very passionate about watches. I think growing up, he always had a dream of starting his own fashion brand.
Mm.
And watch he always loved. So
Yeah.
that was his first thing when he realized that. Um, so that's where we realized that watch and jewelry comes because of my passion.
Yeah,
Uh,
of course.
so being an accessory designer, I've worked in like many accessory segments, and I think out of those, I really enjoy doing jewelry.
Mm.
That's where jewelry and watches came in. So that's how the product idea came in, and Joker and Witch, the name, it actually came from our alter egos. Um,
Yeah.
so when I first met Satish,
Hmm.
he had a Joker tattoo on his arm, and this was way before we even had any plan of starting Joker and Witch.
Hmm.
And it was a joke, honestly, between us that that he's the Joker and I'm the witch, and that on our alter egos. So when we decided to start the brand, we were thinking of names, and um, we kind of thought that why not Joker and Witch?
Okay.
It kind of talks about our story. It also talks about men and women. Um, and I think it was also watches and jewelry coming together. So we kind of thought that it's a perfect name and it sounded
Yeah.
good. It's
Yeah,
that I don't think people, once they know the brand, they would never forget the name. Uh,
absolutely.
so there was, so I think that's how the name came in. It came from a very personal,
Yeah. Yeah, it
story.
does sound pretty quirky. Plus, you happen to have a personal note on it. When people say their brands are their babies, you actually happen to have a mixture of you
Yeah,
both.
yeah.
What was it like working with a minimal capital and those late nights if you have to start from the home? What were those early days like for you?
So when we began, like I said, it was just Satish and I. We didn't have a website at that point of time. We had just started. So initially, we started with watches. So we started our journey on a platform called Fashionara, which was
Okay.
quite popular at that point of time.
Hmm.
And we were doing a consignment model. So it was easy. There were no dispatches and all. We would send the stock to them. They would be the ones dispatching it. So, and that was the phase that I talked about where everything was seemed fine. Products were selling,
Hmm.
flying off the shelf. People
Yeah.
loved it, and it was amazing. Like that initial phase was amazing. But few months down the line, Fashionara couldn't raise their next round of funding, so they had to shut down. So when they shut down, that was our only platform at that point of time. So
Yeah.
they shut down. We had a lot of issues with pending payments that we had to
Hmm.
get them. So our payments were stuck. At that point of time, starting with just an initial capital of say 2 lakhs,
Yeah.
we had about 11 lakhs, which was stuck. So at that point of time, that was huge amount. And so eventually we kind of, got some amount back, got our stock back, and then we realized that, we should not be depending on just one
Hmm.
platform. We need to explore and see different avenues of sale. So that's where we started listing ourselves on all the platforms available. So we listed on at least 10 to 12 platforms that were there at that point of time. So we did everything ourselves. Satish was handling the entire sourcing bit at that point of time. I was handling all the, product listings on the sites. I was handling the photography. I was, doing all the packing. So we would like pack. We had a two-bedroom apartment and everything happened there late nights till like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the night. We would end up packing. There was one night when I think we packed 100 orders, and that was like a milestone for us. So one more thing that when we began in 2015 and 2016, we wanted to become like a accessory destination for,
Mm.
coming out of it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just watches when we started. It
Mm.
was we had five categories. We had
Okay.
watches, jewelry, handbags,
Mm.
footwear, and sunglasses. Now,
Okay.
so that was many categories that we started together, and we were listing on all the platforms. So it was quite a lot going on. We also realized that it's important to focus on your core category rather than having such a diverse,
Mm.
focus. So we cut down on all the categories. We stopped sunglasses, we stopped
Yeah.
bags, we stopped footwear. Um,
Mm.
we were only doing watches and jewelry.
Mm.
And so footwear, I believe, was, one of the biggest mistakes that we did, because see, accessory as a category is very size agnostic.
Yeah.
So that really works out well from planning your inventory. And footwear was the one place,
Mm.
we had to kind of, for every, even when we are, placing orders, you need to have a certain MOQ, and you need to get all the size sets.
Yeah.
And when you start selling, your certain size sets get sold fast, and then you're stuck with the rest of it.
Yeah.
So that was a big challenge that we faced. So yeah, so I think 2016 is where we kind of made all these changes. When we were also selling on, when we came down to some of the market,
Marketplaces. Yeah.
so they were doing well, but we
Mm.
also faced challenges like delayed payments. We all
Mm.
also faced challenges like, being a small brand, there's no attention. Like,
Yeah. At marketplaces because it's in flux with other brands.
exactly. So when you have all the bigger brands who are there to kind of spend money on marketing,
Mm.
a smaller, a newer brand kind of doesn't get that same kind of attention.
Yeah.
And another problem was that market channels, you're always dependent on the category manager who's there.
Mm.
So if your category manager believes in your brand, they'll try to do whatever they can
Yeah.
to push your brand. But if the category manager doesn't believe, then you're screwed, right?
Clearly.
And that is where in we decided that, we really need to have our own platform.
Mm.
And in April 2016 is when we launched our own website. So that itself, so one good thing in this whole thing is that, Satish and I have very complementary skill sets.
Okay.
So in a way, we kind of had skill sets that we could do a lot of things together
Mm.
without any external help.
Yeah.
So our external dependency was very limited.
Mm.
Even when we started our website,
Mm.
we didn't like really have to depend on anybody. It was just both of us who built the website together.
Oh, is
Uh,
it?
yeah, so our website
Yeah.
was on Shopify platform,
Hmm. Yeah.
and it was just both of us who built it. So so we launched our website in April 2016,
Hmm.
and that was a very good decision for us
Hmm.
because we had full control over our,
Yeah.
platform, our sales, our payments. We
Hmm.
were not dependent on anybody. We could do our own ads.
Hmm.
So that I think, and it worked out well. Like right from day one, I don't know, like touchwood, it worked out. We got our first order on the first day of our launch. And it's surprising because at that point of time, for somebody to trust you as a
Hmm.
new website,
Yeah.
but we did. I mean, people did, and we got our orders, and it kept on building. Um,
Hmm.
so Satish would himself manage the ads. He comes from a marketing background, so
Yeah.
he had that strength. So I think, yeah, that's how our initial journey was in terms of, once the platform started, our dependency on external channels completely, it reduced, and we started
Reduce.
focusing on building the brand, building our platform, and whatever was coming from external channels was an add-on.
Okay.
And till date, our own website, contributes to 60% of our sales. and all the other platforms just the 40%.
So, do you think there are certain things that early D2C founders should know about this, like before listing, that there are some, let's say, hidden costs or unit economics that they should be considering before listing or considering their own website?
On the website or the market channels?
The market channels.
So, one of the things that I feel is like, so some of the challenges I already spoke about.
Yeah.
But apart from that, from say a pricing point of view, of course, market channels have their own commissions. So
Right.
you definitely need to account those in. And secondly, um, for us, one of the biggest challenges we have always faced is how do you keep the price parity between market channels and your own website? Because the commercials are very different from website
Right.
versus,
Hmm.
market channels. And each market channel is different in its own way, right? The commission
Yes.
is different for each channel. And so I think when you're doing the pricing or when you're, and there's a constant war between
Hmm.
market channels, uh,
Yeah, of
because
course.
everybody wants discounts. So at one point, the pressure of, discounting your product. So I think two things. One is when you're doing the pricing, you have to keep in account, your margins have to be such that you are able to kind of, um, you know, manage these costs, because it's just not the commission. There's a lot of
Hmm.
post that marketing
Yeah.
discounts. There's quite a lot that will come to
Hmm.
you. So you need to keep that into account. And second is you need to ensure that there has to be some price parity, because otherwise your customer is going to, you know, go around and look at all the
Yeah.
platforms, right? So for in our case, for example, right now we manage that in a sense where our website
Hmm.
are certain top platforms who are able to give us the kind of rebates, because
Hmm.
sometimes platforms these days also give us rebates to ensure that the discounts are passed on to the customers.
Oh, okay.
So the pricing, we try to keep it same on most of our, top platforms. But
Hmm.
then there are platforms where the pricing would be a little high owing to
Hmm.
higher margins, right? Higher commissions
Okay.
from their end. Second is, in terms of marketing. So it's even a bigger war nowadays
Yeah.
in terms of market channels, pushing brands to spend on marketing, right? Now, as a smaller brand or a new brand, it would be very difficult. And most often, there is no clarity as to how that money is being spent or what is
Yeah.
happening. So that is kind of a gray area. But
Hmm.
I feel if you have the potential or you can
Hmm.
spend, then I think that does help create some visibility on
Yeah.
market channels, which eventually does help your brand. But to begin with, I think when listing, there are many things like, your keywords, your uh,
Hmm.
right content that you're putting on the website, on
Right.
market channels. There's the right imagery, the right, pricing for sure.
Hmm.
Like, I think
100%.
today, even today, like customers are very price conscious. And I think
Yeah.
loyalty comes later, price is.
Hmm. Comes first nowadays. Yeah.
So, the the math that you're doing when you're doing your production or your sourcing, it has to be such that you are able to eventually sell it at a price that is still competitive.
Definitely. Because people usually get confused between whether they should just start their own website first or just start with the marketplaces so that other people can handle. Because from the website, they have more responsibility, of course, as compared to the marketplaces.
So, I believe that website definitely helps you
Hmm.
create a brand identity for yourself
Hmm.
and create an individual space for, who you are as a brand.
Yeah.
But how do you get your customer to come there? Right now,
Hmm.
that's the biggest challenging part. So
Yeah.
if you're, and that happens mostly either through, say, social media, or
Yeah.
it happens through, paid
Sometimes.
ads, right? So meta ads. But again, the challenge is that not everybody is able to crack that. The
Yeah.
entire
True. Hmm.
I think a little bit of understanding of ads as a space, as a founder, is important.
Yeah.
Because if you're completely dependent on somebody else, you could be, taken for a ride.
Yeah.
But at the same point of time, I do feel that presence on marketplaces is also important,
Hmm.
because even though you might not get the same kind of the visibility like a bigger
Hmm.
brand, you're still there, and there are many customers coming onto that platform, so you will get discovered in some way or the other.
Hmm.
So I think both have their advantages, and
Yeah.
the way of managing both are quite
Hmm.
different, right?
Yeah.
It's not the same approach for sure.
Hmm.
If your intent is to create a brand
Hmm.
and to have an identity of yourself,
Hmm.
definitely have a website,
Yeah.
because on a marketplace, you are just a marketplace brand. You
Hmm.
don't have your own
Own
identity,
brand. Yeah.
right? So, somebody coming on Mintra and looking at watches
Hmm.
might see multiple brands over there.
Yeah.
And, they might not know who you are, who are you, what are you trying to build.
Of
Um,
course.
there, they're only looking at the style, the product, and the pricing,
Hmm.
right? I think the brand building part of it, like if you intend to
Hmm.
build yourself as a brand,
Yeah.
then that has to be either through social channels, or it has to
Hmm.
be through market brand activation activities, or it has to definitely, like, your website is your,
Go
main
to move. Yeah.
activity. Yeah.
That's probably somewhere you'll get the customer loyalty as well, because for marketplaces, the moment they'll see a slight amount of price difference, they'll just shift to another brand. But I feel like your website is very important to create the brand, and plus that's how you get to have any customer's loyalty, because they know, okay, I have to just buy from this brand only.
I think having a website also creates a certain sense of, not just loyalty, but a certain
Hmm.
sense of, authenticity.
Hmm.
In a customer's mind, how
Hmm.
they perceive you,
Hmm.
um, being just a brand on a marketplace versus having your own identity, there's a
Hmm.
certain sense of authenticity and trust that customers would have.
Yeah.
That, if I have a problem, I have a number I can reach out to, or
Yeah.
there is a certain um, comfort that is there.
Yeah. A trust factor, basically.
Yes, yes. So,
So, when it comes to growth, what has worked the best for you guys in terms of customer acquisition? Are these ads, influencers, organic? What is your go to strategy that you believe in the most?
So for us, it has always been performance ads,
Hmm.
right? And we have been, and we do it in-house. We
Hmm.
don't have any external partners. We do
Yeah.
it in-house, so we also have a lot of control on where we are spending our money,
Hmm.
and what is the, ROI that we're getting from it. So most of our acquisitions happens through performance ads, and second would be through social.
Hmm.
Uh, so I think a lot of brand activities that we do on socials, be it influencers or be
Hmm.
it with other brands, or, so I think those help
Yeah.
for sure, but those are
Hmm.
not the primary, acquisition channels. Um,
Hmm.
Another thing is that, like, as a brand being bootstrapped,
Yeah.
we have always had a problem of capital, right?
Hmm.
There's always a crunch. So we've built the brand, honestly, the last 10 years being extremely frugal.
Hmm.
So we have always, like, from day one, we have always kept in mind that whatever we are doing, it has
Yeah.
to make commercial sense. It shouldn't be just money leaking.
Hmm.
Right.
Right.
What happens is, and that is one of the reasons why we, uh, you know, tend to incline more towards the performance ads than
Yeah.
brand activities, because when it comes to influencers, or when it comes to brand activities
Hmm.
at customers, it's very difficult to kind of,
Yeah.
evaluate as to how much impact is happening.
Yeah.
We always had the challenge of capital, and that's why, like, we were never able to do big bag, brand campaigns, or we were never
Hmm.
able to do paid influencer
Hmm.
campaigns. We were always restricted to do, like, barter influencer
Yeah.
collaboration. honeymoons. We
Okay.
were restricted to do uh, collaborations with brands. So anything where there's a lot of commercial
Hmm.
involved, we were never able
You
to do.
skipped it. Yeah.
And that was a conscious decision that we also
Hmm.
took, because we would rather put that money in performance side where we
Yeah.
know how it's actually performing and we have
Hmm.
control over that. That's where I think, from a customer acquisition point of view, that was our outlook always.
Since you guys did not took any external funding, right? So what do you think people usually get wrong?
See, I think it's not right to say that one way of doing it is
Yeah.
right or one way of doing it is wrong.
Fair.
Eventually, it comes down to the fact that how are you
Hmm.
able to maintain your books, and how are you
Hmm.
able to maintain your profitability. I think
Yeah.
profitability is one of the biggest things that everybody, either bootstrapped or investor run company, has to keep in mind. But then again, there are challenges, right? Now,
Hmm.
when we were building our brand, now from day one, we knew that we did not want to raise any kind of funding, and it was a
Okay.
conscious decision.
Okay.
We were up, like, we had some opportunities where we
Hmm.
could have raised
Right.
funds, but we didn't want to do that primarily because we believed that we had a very clear path for
Hmm.
ourselves. We knew what we wanted to do. And a lot of times, what happens is when investors come in,
Hmm.
they come with a lot of ideas of their own.
Yeah.
They also come with a lot of pressure to scale.
Hmm. Of course.
Now, we were clear that we did not want to get into that kind of a
Hmm.
journey. Process of scaling up is where a lot of companies in the past have not focused on profitability,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
So, which also ends up to, failures and, not being able to do
Hmm.
what you wanted to. Not that the founder did not have a idea or did
Yeah.
not to use, it has to be sustainable. Like, what you're
Yeah.
making has to sustain what your sales has to sustain your
Hmm.
ecosystem. And
Right.
if that's not happening, I believe then it becomes little difficult. You choose to do it bootstrapped or you choose to get an investor on board, it has to be important that one, you stay profitable, two,
Yeah.
you have a very clear path of what you want to become. Because it's
Hmm.
very easy in the journey to kind of, get diverted into doing many things.
Right.
But as a founder, if you don't have that clarity, it's
Hmm.
easy to kind of, somebody tells you, okay, ye bhi kar sakte hain, ye bhi kar sakte hain.
Right.
So then your focus kind of, goes away.
Yeah.
That's what I believe.
So you guys somehow were able to make a clear-cut roadmap for yourselves that happened to work for you for one D2C brand. And at what point in this journey your another brand Teej comes into picture? Because that is a little similar to it, but at the same time little different. How did that came along?
So in the beginning, Teej was not part of the plan. It actually evolved as Joker&Witch grew. Uh,
Hmm.
I would say the initial first 5 years of Joker&Witch were quite tough for us. We had
Hmm.
many, challenges. Like I said, all these challenges, of course, capital, and of course, HR. We were also never able to hire the right people.
Yeah.
We had to always hire, like, we still have a very young team, because
Hmm.
we always used to hire young kids and train them, and
Yeah.
and it was nice because they also learned a
Hmm.
lot. Now,
Right.
in this entire journey, what we realized is that Joker and Witch is a modern, minimal Gen Z brand,
Yeah.
uh, what with watches and
Hmm.
accessories. Now, this was 2019 when we kind of started Teej,
Teej.
and
Okay.
we realized that the same customer
Hmm.
has a different side to them, which
Hmm.
is the Indian, ethnic
Ethnic
category,
side. Yeah.
ethnic side to it. So the same customer is
Hmm.
wearing this at one point in their, life,
Hmm.
or during certain occasions, and and the same customer is wearing Indian wear or Indian
Hmm.
jewelry during for occasions, and that's a part of their lifestyle, right? So that's why we realized that, why not explore that as well?
Hmm.
And when we started looking at that as a category, jewelry specifically,
Hmm.
um, but we also realized that, at that point of time in the market, in jewelry, ethnic
Hmm.
jewelry segment, there was a lot of, a lot of bling. There was a
Hmm.
lot of, kundan and gold,
Right.
even in
Proper
the
ethnicity. Yeah.
Indian inspired jewelry, but not too loud. The
Yeah.
whole point was, how do I get jewelry that's not too loud and
Hmm.
even if still ethnic?
Yeah.
Mm. And then, of course, your, oxidized jewelry was
Hmm.
available in the local markets. It was
Hmm.
available in on platforms, but very unorganized.
Yeah.
There's no brand as such that was doing it.
Hmm.
So that's where when we launched Teej, the initial concept was basically it was oxidized jewelry was our core category.
Okay.
And our idea was that it has to be jewelry that it's not shouting out loud.
Hmm.
It's still ethnic, it's subtle.
Hmm.
You wear it with your ethnic outfit. You can
Yeah.
wear it with your Western outfit also.
Hmm.
I think over time we realized
Hmm.
that the people who are liking Tej are
Hmm.
actually the little older customer.
Yeah.
There are of course younger customers
Hmm.
also, but it's more of a millennial brand, I would
Yeah.
say.
Majority lies in
Yeah.
that category.
Building Tej, we also realized that jewelry was doing well for us, and
Hmm.
another category that we spotted was saris.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and again, the logic was the same, that
Hmm.
we want to explore saris, but we don't want to do something that is too blingy, too occasional,
Hmm.
too it has to be something very wearable. It has
Yeah.
to be something that a regular person would feel comfortable in, right?
Hmm.
And that's where even in saris we started doing cotton, linen,
Hmm.
malmal. We started
Hmm.
doing little bit of tissue. And even if you see our occasion wear saris, they're not
Hmm.
loud.
Not blinky. Yeah.
Yeah, so and I think that is where, as a brand we
Hmm.
stand in terms of what Teej is.
Yeah.
Um, so it started actually like the thought process was like that. That's how we began Teej.
Yeah, that's how you found the gap, not being too blingy, but at the same time, just enough ethnic so that people can just wear it in your day to day. Because usually, whenever you want to put an Indian outfit, you need something subtle that is not Western, but that is not even Kundan at the same time.
It also kind of, helped, I believe that, with Gen Z also and
Mm.
with millennials over also, in the last, say, 10 years, there's been quite a shift of customer mindset also, where earlier, I believe that even for occasions, it was always heavy saris, heavier jewelry. And over time, you've seen that shift happen where today women don't want to wear such heavy things. They want to wear easy, breathable fabric. They want to wear lighter jewelry. So it kind of, went well for
Yeah.
us also because the mindset shift was already happening.
And now looking at where you guys are today, where are Joker and Witch and Teej in terms of, scale, team, and just overall presence?
We are today, I mean, this year we would be closing at a 120 CR, revenue. We are a team of around 150 people now.
Mm.
Um, our headquarters we're based out of Bangalore,
Mm.
and um, uh, we are present. So our website still remains the major platform,
Yeah.
and apart from that, we are on most of the bigger e-commerce platforms. We are on
Mm.
Amazon, Flipkart, Nykaa, uh,
Mm.
Ajio. Uh, and apart from that, we recently launched, after 10 years of e-commerce journey, we finally launched our first offline store. So we launched our first offline store in December last year, Bangalore, in Lulu Mall. In Jan, we launched our second store, again in Bangalore, in Electronic City. So that's I believe that's the next leg of our journey. Offline being the next step for us. Uh, and in the entire process, 3 years back, we also got partially acquired by Global Bees.
Yeah.
Even then, we still function today as an independent entity
Mm.
only under the Global Bees, brands. So So yeah, that's where we are today.
And looking back, do you think now, since you have cracked the codes and you have built two brands in a similar category, do you feel that there were some earlier things that you guys had done, and you feel if you had started now, you would have done it differently?
I think, to be honest, I wouldn't change anything honestly in the journey because, again, like we wouldn't raise funding, we would still do it
Hmm.
the way we did it. Today, I would maybe not start this brand
Hmm.
because it was a good thing that we started
Early
early
on.
because
Yeah.
we had that early mover advantage. Uh,
Hmm.
we were there at a time when there was nobody there.
Our focus from business to a little around the two of you. Like you have mentioned through your entire conversation that you are mostly the design and the product person. And you happen to mention that Satish is usually the sourcing, the finance number person, basically. How does that dynamic work for you guys on a day to day basis? Do you ever happen to have, those product design plus the number clashes, okay, when you guys are deciding onto something? And if that happens, how do you guys deal
Of
with
course, and it used to happen a lot in the initial days, to be
it?
honest. But one good thing was that, like I said earlier, that our strengths were quite mutually exclusive.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so we ensured that, we were keeping our roles separate from each other, but at the
Hmm.
same point of time, I believe from working together because I think we had very similar, path that was clear.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think it also helps because we are also married.
We'll do a quick rapid fire for you just to end it on again on a lighter note. So I'll just hit you up with a few questions and try to say the very first thing that comes to your mind. No
Okay,
thinking. Okay.
okay.
Do you belong to team early mornings or the late nights?
Late night,
Are you an impulse buyer or the planned shopper?
impulse buyer.
One thing that you always carry with you in your bag, no matter where you are going.
I tend to get a lot of headaches, so I always
Hmm.
have some kind of a balm with me.
Great. Your go-to comfort food.
Maggie,
Oh, same. One trend that you secretly don't like.
mismatched earrings,
One word, or two maybe, that you would use to describe Satish.
passionate
If not entrepreneurship.
to become a artist.
That's great. And towards the end, do you happen to have any quick advice for any D2C founder or so who might be just thinking about starting their brand, who are just in their ideation phase? Ki karna chahiye, can I? Any quick advice?
I think for one advice, I would say entrepreneurship is definitely not easy. It's a tough journey. Um, you do feel you would question yourself multiple times.
Hmm.
Ki, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
There will be really bad days. You will definitely feel very disheartened.
Hmm.
There will be good days, bad days. All those things will happen. But I believe the one thing that as a founder you need to be very clear about is like, do you have faith in your design, in your
Hmm.
idea, basically, right? And do you think there is a gap for it? If
Hmm.
that is there, then I think persistence is one of the biggest thing that as a founder should have, is what, you know just keep going at it, like just keep
Hmm.
believing in yourself and keep doing it, because a lot of times what happens is many founders, they give up after, say, the 1 2 years or 3 years
Hmm.
of the journey. But I think something that I have also learned and I've heard is that the initial 5 years of your business is the hardest always, and if
Yeah.
you are able to cross those 5 years, then it's a different journey. So if you're able to be persistent and you're able to be very diligently keep doing what you're doing, believing in what
Hmm.
you're doing, then it will end up paying off for sure.
Yeah. All right. That was quite sensible and beautiful advice for altogether. And thank you so much. I've actually genuinely enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for being so honest and taking us all through your journey. It has been an absolute pleasure having this conversation with you.
Thank you so much, Muskan. Even like I had a good time. I had a great time talking about, our journey and it's not always that you kind of look back at how your
Hmm.
journey was, and you see that, you know, what all you have faced and you've overcome and you've come to a certain stage. And of course, there's a lot more to go as well,
Of course.
right? And it was amazing to have this chat with you, and I'm glad I was able to share my story. And yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.